welcome to another episode of the Speakeasy podcast. My name is Kate, otherwise known as Narataki.
And I'm Alan, otherwise known as Hisui.
We are from reversethieves.com, and you can go there to get all the episodes of the Speakeasy podcast, as well as mini blog posts every week, and various other podcasts that seem to be growing. We just keep making more and more different kinds, so always something to listen to at this point.
And if you would like to contact us to suggest things that we should look at, or questions that you have for us, or just general praise, or more likely insults, then you can...
No insults, only praise.
All right. That's probably what I'd like to hear more. You can contact us at reversethieves@gmail.com. You can leave comments on the blog, or you can contact us on Twitter. I am HisuiRT.
And I'm NaratakiRT.
And we will usually get back to you. I cannot promise you immediately, but eventually your questions will be answered.
So this episode's topic is, it's kind of a retrospective on the podcast so far. That sounds so important, but it's like not at all. We are starting our 5th year of podcasting. So we started this in 2010. So we're just going to kind of take a look at how it's evolved, how we've changed. And then in the second half, we will be answering a bunch of questions. Kind of a simple, like, warm-up for the year. But before that, we have an interrogation question, which is...
What is your favorite new show from the winter 2014 anime lineup?
So I guess we're not allowed to pick, like, second seasons or anything, right? Or continuing shows.
It was not specified. But
let's interpret it that way.
I was about to say.
The way we do SWAT reviews.
Because I was about to say, so that otherwise your answer would be Kuroko's basketball, Kuroko's basketball, Kuroko's basketball.
Pretty much, probably. You go first. We haven't watched everything, obviously. There are a few shows still come out, but I think we've watched like 90% of what we're gonna watch, so.
I still haven't watched Robot Girl Z. I'm still a little salty about that. Let's see.
We'll watch it! I just wish somebody would stream it. I guess I'm just, like, sitting around pretending that's gonna happen.
I've just resigned myself.
It's coming out really sporadically, though.
Yeah.
It doesn't come out every week, so we have time. It's alright.
So says.
So fine. Okay, it's all my fault. You haven't seen Robot Girl Z yet. Is that your favorite, even though you haven't seen it?
No. Because it could be horrible. I'm still optimistic, because... You know, that's me, a fountain of optimism and a belief in a bright future. That's what everybody says about me.
That's generally how I think of you.
I'm going to go with a cliche answer. But I'm going to go with Space Dandy.
How is that a cliche answer?
I feel like that's like the answer that like most people are going to give. I feel like, but for not the reasons that people expect. Can you guess the reason?
Do tell. Butts?
No.
Lots and lots of love for butts?
No. It's because it reminds me of Galaxy Angel.
I think you mentioned that, right, in the SWAT review?
Yeah. And thereby, that is a powerful nostalgia to invoke. And so, yeah, I like the, devil may care about continuing. Let's just tell a fun space comedy. Because, once again, I feel like there are going to be lots of episodes with very different feels. And some of them are going to be horrible. And some of them are going to be mediocre. And some of them are going to be brilliant. But kind of like any kind of anthology series, you just expect that. And I feel like I don't mind that kind of potpourri. Because usually if a series is good, like Galaxy Angel, or like I hope Space Dandy is, hopefully the number of hits and things you really love will be greater than the number of misses. And with the people involved, I think that can happen. And I feel like the problem with sometimes with a lot of big names being on a project is too many chefs ruin the stew. Like, I feel like that's what happened with Fractal and the such. But I feel like when it's kind of episodic and everybody can kind of, like, the big name can kind of broadly paint with their paintbrush their one episode and then hand it off to somebody else, once again, you're going to get some stinkers or like some experimental ones. You're like, what? But I feel like it has a potential. I really like the potential of it, and I enjoyed the first episode. It was really kind of itself. Like, I don't feel like the next episode's going to be like that, and it just seems like it's going to be fun in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we know quite what to expect from it, which is a little bit exciting in a way. And there isn't really a show like it right now, and there hasn't been I think that the setting is really fun. And it kind of reminds me, even though it's totally not like either of these things, it kind of reminds me a little like Dirty Pair, kind of that like really like collateral damage of this job that you have and going to different worlds. And then also it kind of a little bit reminds me of like Captain Tyler. Like it has a little bit of nostalgia for a bunch of things. I really liked it too. That's not my choice, but it is not a cliche choice.
My only worry about the fandom of, we'll probably get into this later, is that people are going to expect every episode to hit it out of the park and be like, brilliant! Whereas I feel like if you go back, even Cowboy Bebop had certain episodes that were better than others, and I feel like Samurai Champloo, same thing. Like, there was an overall bigger story, but a lot of the episodes were just playing around with ideas, and some of them were great, some of them were blah, and a lot of them were in the middle. But I feel like that's kind of the director's strength of just like having like an overall bigger story, and then these little stories that kind of do their own thing, and usually remember the strongest of them. And I feel like that's what Space Dandy's real potential is as well. But I'm just worried that fans are going to expect every episode to be the greatest thing that ever did. And like halfway through the season, they're going to be like, I saw like 12 episodes and only 6 of them were brilliant. This show is garbage.
Well, the fickleness, it happens a lot. Since I'll pick Space Dandy, again, I'm really excited about the show too. But I think so far the one that I liked the best was Noragami. I think the second episode is out, but we haven't seen it yet. But it was the one that I really wanted to see the next episode of. I liked the rapport between the guy and the girl in the series. I liked the monster element, and it's the like the yokai and the gods and things like that, but it also had that action going on. So yeah, I'm like, and I'm not familiar with the manga or anything like that, so I really enjoyed what it did in the first episode, and I'm looking forward to hopefully watching it for the season. Otherwise, it'll end up in a post-mortem that you guys will hear some other time.
I did really enjoy the fact that they made a real effort to have the female lead be significant. I mean, that might change, like I said in the SWAT review, especially since that third member, the other guy, seems to be like he's going to be the sacred weapon of the main character. But I feel like even then, it seems set up that both of them have to do stuff. And once again, I feel like in shonen manga, it's so easy for the female characters, unless they're written by Yellow Tanabe, to be like, you could go over in that corner.
But that's it. You just hit on what I was thinking about, too. I would love to see, like, that kind of a partnership that Kakaishi had. Maybe that's what I was, like, feeling a little bit possibilities of. I don't know. In this. I didn't even really notice it until right now, but, yeah, maybe that's what I'm hoping for.
It's like, this is just going over one episode. And I will just give special mention to a returning show that I was really surprised how much I got right back into Saki, watching Saki the Nationals.
I thought you were going to say something good, Al. Silver Spoon.
But man, that show is garbage, but it's fun garbage. And we learned the most important question, Kate. We did learn are the Saki girls wearing panties?
And the answer is no. I don't know. Doesn't that take away some of the mystique of the show?
Watch, Kate. Watch as Ed Chavez, the first thing he comments on is not about Space Dandy, not about manga. It's going to be like, dear Miss Renner, let me tell you about Saki and the panties.
I'm just saying. That was more a joke. I don't really care or really overthink about Saki and its fandom.
Dear Miss Renner, I, Ed Chavez of Vertical, must officially state.
I definitely thought you were going to say Silver Spoon. Because we watched that last night. And that was really nice to have back. And although I have to say, that show, especially the first episode of the second season, it really is not nice to people who really like Kumama, because you know that guy has not a chance in hell with the main girl. So it's just a really mean episode, I think. Because it's just Hachiken thinking that, like, that's what's happening. And it doesn't get disproven by the end of the episode either. But as the viewer...
It is so obvious.
So bullshit.
You're like, all right, so when is he going to find out that, like, her grandmother died or something?
Exactly. Well, I think she said, I need to pay respects to your family, so it's probably, like, a member of his family that it's related to, whatever the incident is.
Yeah, because Hachiken met her grandmother, so at least... Because she made a big deal that it wasn't concerning him. And so it's probably, some relative of Kumaba's that died, and he never met him, and that's why they're like... it's like a tease. That episode is really a lot, and I think someone shipping is showing.
Yes, I told you though. I've tweeted about this that I'm not even bothering to ship this club because this is never even going to happen even a little bit. Like, I'm not even bothering. I'm just saying that.
You know the feelings that you have in your heart, and you know there are other people
and they're
out
toying with you. Not nice. Not nice. Silver spoon. So moving on from the new season to our new season, I guess, of podcasting. This just came up because I was realizing that that the last episode we did was episode 48, so this is 49, and that means we're starting the 5th year. And I was kind of blown away, actually. I couldn't believe that we'd been podcasting that long. And consistently doing so. And so it seemed like a good time to just look back, and we feel like the podcast has changed a lot. And if anybody has been listening since the first episode, thank you. Hope we're a little bit better at it than we were then. I don't know. I never listen to the podcasts. My secret is that I never listen to them, so I have no idea. I mean, I edit them, some of them. We trade back and forth editing, so I don't know if anybody can ever tell. I don't think so, right? Because people don't even notice editing, I don't think, even if you didn't do it.
I think other podcasts notice editing. I've noticed the more I edit podcasts, the more I notice other people's editing. But I feel like it's almost like to call it out is kind of like to mention somebody's fly is open. If something is egregiously wrong... You usually, like, to the side, hey, you should, fix this thing about your editing. But other than that, you just kind of...
let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't bringing it up because I want people to talk about it, because I certainly don't. I was just saying that me and Al trade off editing the main Speakeasy. Al is nice enough to do all the SWAT reviews. But we trade off. However, I don't think there's any... difference that can be told between, when I do one month and you do another, so.
And I usually listen to them a while after we post them, usually when I have nothing else to listen to. I will notice, especially with the SWAT reviews, you can tell pretty much when I went to bed. Or if I did it in the afternoon, because I'm much like, let's just get this shit over with.
Or it's like the last one of the night or whatever it is, yeah. Well, I think that's why I try to edit the Speakeasy in intervals, so I don't get that, oh my god, I just want this to be over fatigue. So I tried to do it in 30-minute intervals in order to prevent myself from doing that and getting lazy, because you totally do by then you're like, I don't care anymore if he says, it doesn't matter.
The kid just make an anti-Semitic remark? Alright, I'll leave it in, whatever.
Say that! I would never do that! Besides, anything stupid I say, you always put it as a stinger at the end. So, for anybody who has been listening from the beginning, you probably remember then that the podcast started on Anime 3000 as part of their network of podcasts. And in a way, the podcast wasn't even our idea. I mean...
It had been something that we had kicked around a bunch, because we had been doing the blog for a while. And we were like, maybe we should do a companion podcast. That would be... but then we'd have to edit it.
Then we have to do, like, more effort.
And I remember, because we were, like, guest starring on a few podcasts. And then I remember Sean had us on for Anime 3000. And he was like, hey, you guys, I see you guys around doing guests. And you guys do a lot of hosts. Have you ever thought about doing a podcast? And we mentioned, oh yeah, we have. But we're lazy and we don't like to edit. And no one likes to edit. No one has ever gone, oh boy, I'm going to go home and edit me a podcast. It's going to be fun. That is like people, I'm sure that person exists. But they're about as frequent as the people who go, oh man, time to do my taxes. That's going to be fun. They're like freaks of nature. And so he offered to edit the podcast, and we were like, sure, well, let's try it.
And also, I think we were actually on Anime 3000 talking about Otaku Diaries. I think that's when it happened, which was so long ago at this point. It's just kind of amazing. But then Sean got very busy, and he had a lot going on. So in, after 2010, and then, I think it was, the middle of 2011, he asked us to start doing our own editing, and so then we sort of moved off and started posting it on the Libsyn so that we had our own sort of space for it, and that was no, knock to Anime 3000 at all, but we felt like, well, if we're editing it, then we want to just be able to do whatever we want all the time, because, we were kind of trying to adhere to a little bit more of a format at that point, which we totally never did anyway. So, sorry, Sean. But if we were going to have to, do everything, then we wanted to just do whatever all the time. So, we moved off.
Nothing but Type Moon podcasts all the time.
Oh, my God. People probably think that's what we do, because whatever. I mean... It's kind of amazing to be... Okay, so in a recent...
As an aside.
Yeah, in a recent podcast that Gerald and Daryl from AWO did, they made some crack about how me and Al have our nicknames of Narataki and Hisui, and maybe that's, that's what they need, because people get them mixed up. Let me tell you that people still get us mixed up. And doesn't matter if I use my real name or my nickname. I think they actually get us mixed up more from the nicknames than our real names are so clearly not, you don't mix them up. You know who is Al and who is Kate. But, people forget who is Narataki and who is Hisui, and then, madness ensues.
I don't know. I still, we were talking about this. I still feel like there is this tendency when people work together or couples to group them together as having a unified opinion. And it does not help that on a lot of things we have very similar opinions. Since we agree about 75% to 80% of the time, people just assume that other 10 to 15% is totally the same. But it is not.
It's not. We're different people. But people constantly get us confused. And, I've literally had... I think this person must have just been really confused that day, as far as I could tell. But I have had people still say, they did not know that I was a girl. And it's... I think that would be impossible if you listen to the podcast, right? I think... in my head, my voice is not as high-pitched, but I'm pretty sure that it's still, pretty high.
I know that, once again, someone's going to complain about, I don't understand why anybody has anime Twitter icons, but there are still people who only follow me on Twitter who every once in a while are shocked that I'm not a girl. Because I swear I remember somebody watching the video cast I do of it, about manga chapter reviews and being shocked that I was a guy.
But isn't that the joke of anime Twitter, though? Is that all guys have moe anime girl icons or whatever? Isn't that the expected thing? They're the opposite.
But not all women have anime guy icons.
No.
Women are wild cards.
I do. Yeah, I think we contribute to our own confusion, actually. And so, originally on the blog, our genders were not known. And that's where the names come from. I mean, we started blogging. We've been blogging longer than we've been podcasting. So we've been blogging since '07. And at that time, like, our gender, there was no, we weren't really, there was like not, I don't even know if Twitter was like, it might have been invented, but it wasn't a thing at that point. So our genders were not revealed on the blog. We didn't use our real names. And that was mostly Al deferring to me because I felt uncomfortable. You know, girls, the internet, whatever. I'm not gonna have a whole thing about that. But I preferred to like keep it ambiguous. Like, I don't know, it could be a guy, it could be a girl, who is it? But then, you know, since time has sort of changed and I feel more comfortable, and especially in the community, I feel more comfortable. So I'm not really worried about that. So that's also one of the reasons that I was more willing to, like, reveal!
But I think, once again, as the song goes, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really had any problems. I'm gonna knock on wood for that one. But, you know, at the beginning I was kind of worried, like, oh great, I don't want it to get, like, weird or crazy or scary. And luckily I've been really lucky and I feel very welcome in the community, so that's not a problem anymore. And also, I mean, I can't do a podcast and hide my, or I could use like one of those
vein filters.
I'm actually doing this podcast with a Bane mask on. I've been doing it. This is not my real voice. Yeah. I'm not gonna have like a voice changer, so I had to get over it to do the podcast. But the nicknames are something that I think it's more a callback to our beginnings and something that we sort of got used to, and I don't know, I like them. We go by our real names too. It's cool. You can call me Kate. You don't have to, like, I don't think anybody calls me Narataki in real life. But I do think that's why people get confused, because they can't remember, like, the fake names, and so then it, like, gets all messed up in their head, and they think that I'm a huge Type Moon fan. For the millionth time, everyone, I don't know anything about Type Moon except that Gilgamesh is hot, and there is a girl named Saber. Like, that's pretty much it, okay? That's it.
And I think at this point...
And that's probably all there is, right?
I think at this point, you've seen just enough art at the top of, if nothing else, Type Moon roundups and various posts that you're like, I think that looks like a Type Moon character.
I can do that a little bit. But only if it's like Saber or that black-haired girl with the red outfit, or the red school uniform thingamajig. Her, and then Gilgamesh, because I pay attention to him. So when he shows up, I notice. Otherwise...
You know what? I don't think anybody's really thrown your tastes on me.
Of course, I was about to say, like, I don't have any taste. That's not what I meant. I have
she watches
taste.
Nothing but Queen's Blade and Ikitosen.
I definitely have things that I like that Al is not necessarily into. Yeah, but I don't know why. I don't know.
I think just every once in a while, I feel like people just hope that I'm a girl and then are horribly disappointed.
No, I think, you know what it is, though? I don't know if I have, like, a big fandom. Like, Type Moon is such a huge thing, and it's, like, a big franchise, and there's all these iterations and all this stuff. You know, I don't know if I have, like, a series or a show like that I'm, like... I also feel you know what I'm saying?
I feel also most of the time, by the time anybody knows a series that you're that get hype about, they know you well enough to, like, if anybody associates Kate with Kuroko's basketball, they probably know you well enough to generally differentiate Al and Kate.
But yeah, so I don't feel like I have that, you know, you do the Type roundup, and it's like an ever-present sort of part of your fandom, where I don't really have something like that, unless you count, like, Detective Conan, you know, or something, but, so I think maybe that also contributes to it.
Nobody has ever accidentally gone, Alan Mendez, that huge Nightmare Before Christmas guy.
No one has done that, but yeah, I don't even know if anybody knows that I'm, like, a Nightmare Before Christmas collector. I am! That's your secret, like, little Easter egg information for this episode. So yeah, so the Speakeasy, we transferred over, and we've been doing it pretty much consistently since then. I have not moved all the episodes yet. I know that seems insane because, like, we moved in 2011 and I still haven't moved all the episodes. But the problem is, or maybe it's a good thing, it's not really a problem, is that since then, we've also added a lot of podcasts. And so there isn't as much room. I usually try to put up an old episode repost on there when we have a month where we like just do a speakeasy so that there's a little more room on our account. But especially lately, we've had so much content that just hasn't been possible. I mean, the SWAT reviews started that same year. And I just have to pat ourselves on the back about that because it is by far the most popular thing we have ever done. Writing or podcasting, like, that is the most popular thing that we do. And for anybody, I mean, I don't know if anybody listens to the Speakeasy and doesn't listen to the SWAT reviews, but just a reminder, before we started the SWAT reviews, we always did a look at all the first episodes on the blog. And honestly, I just got tired of writing them. Like, it was tedious.
You know what it was also? We kept trying to do something different. And every year, like, I tried little songs at the front of it, and this and that. And I felt like reader interest was waning on it. I feel like that's when Anime News Network started doing the season reviews. And I felt like that killed off a lot of people blogging about the first episodes. I mean, episode blogs always do that because
that's what they do.
Yeah. So, but it's pretty much in there. They're going to talk about the rest of the episodes of the season, so it isn't anything out of their regular schedule. Like, if nobody ever did another season preview again, they'd still be doing it because it's just part of their rhythm. But I feel like ANN, by doing their season preview, I just remembered, like, the number of just blogs who did it otherwise just died. And so I felt like we still wanted to do something about it. And I was like, what could we do? How can we, like, what could we do differently that would make this? Because we used to also do the little rating charts and stuff like that.
Yeah, we tried a lot of stuff. And also, one of the things that we were doing, which I thought was not working, was that we'd wait to post it till we had watched everything, and that also was not helping. I felt like the relevance of that stuff dies very quickly, and so I felt like we were waiting too long because we had to watch all the shows that we wanted to watch, and then write about them, and then like put it all up at once.
And I feel like, and we'll talk about this in the next section, the fact that as stuff started to simulcast more and more, people wanted to know quicker and quicker, because back in the day when you had to download fan subs, it was still kind of a moment of effort. So a lot of people, I think, were much more hesitant to like, well, let me see what like a bunch of the preview guides say, and then I'll decide what I want to download. And I feel like now that you can pretty much like watch it instantly, there is a lot more, well, what does everybody else think where this show is going to go? Or, oh, let me quickly listen to a bunch and then I'll just determine what I'm going to listen to right now. And it's a lot more, I felt like people wanted that information a lot quicker. Whereas when we started, I felt like people took a lot more time to get around to watching the new shows of the season.
But we started our SWAT reviews, and like I said, I mean, just definitely great idea, and I think it's been really, it's also gained sort of popularity as we've done them, and, you know, I enjoy doing them. I feel like they're exactly the amount of effort that watching a first episode and talking about it deserves. Like, I don't think you need to overanalyze it. You know, I think it should be short, it should be quick, it's my first impression, that's it.
Yeah, it's a gut reaction, that's all you're going to get in any of those first episode, unless unless you're some kind of clairvoyant and can touch the episode and see its future.
But yeah, and I feel like it's fun, but I also don't think it, you know, I didn't want to put like too much into it because who knows where it's going to go. So that started in 2011, and we've been doing that every season.
Also, I think that it helps that if you watch something like, I'm sure, what was that one, Yuga no Sora?
Ugh.
That, like...
That creepy, like, incest anime? Yeah.
Because if, let's say you...
Watch that.
you're the one who puts them on the schedules.
Okay, it was a huge mistake. Anyway.
But you watch that, right? And then I just remember... Because that's when we were still doing the written ones.
Was it?
Yeah. You had to go and then, like, like a week later, like, recall the trauma of that show and be like, what do I have to say about this other than it blows, it is creepy.
Never watch this. And also get a screenshot. No, I don't want him to do any of that. Yeah, and I like the idea that it's just really, like, we absolutely record them right after we watch it. That's it. We don't like overthink it. We don't and maybe and I think that's what gives it a little bit of us in it and makes it a little bit different. Is just I don't go and research a whole ton about it or anything. It's just this is what I thought right this minute.
Yeah, we basically get up from my living room, walk 5 steps to my bedroom where my computer is in the mic. We record it. We save it, and if there's another one, we go back into the living room and repeat.
Exactly. So we've been doing that since 2011. We do it for every season. And then just last year, we started adding...
We added 3 things, actually.
Last year? We added 3 things?
Yes.
We added case close reviews, postmortems.
And I added the riot controls.
And the riot control. Right. I forgot. I mean, I didn't forget, but it didn't occur to me. So... The Riot Control reviews are a spin-off of the Speakeasy. You can explain them, Al.
Okay.
In case people haven't...
There are some shows that are just too terrible or too not Kate for Kate to watch.
Except for Yosuga no Sora, like, what the hell was I doing, man?
I don't know.
I was, like, falling asleep on the job there.
I swear I remember me going, why are we watching this, Kate? And you're like, I don't know. I think it might have... I'm like, I don't think it is.
I probably got it confused with something else, and it was a horrible mistake. But yeah, so, we don't watch every first episode.
And I do not watch everything on the Riot Control. Like that wrestling anime last season, I was like, no.
Or like Chastity Belt Sister or whatever it is this season.
And some guy was like, you should do that. I was like, no. You can watch that Antonov serial. But... I love this vlog and I love our viewers, but I'm not willing to shoot myself in the head to watch that shitty show.
So even Al has his limits, but let's just say Al's limits are like broader than my limits.
And I don't think, other than watching Saki the National, which I was like, this is going to be garbage, will be garbage I like. Most of the time, I don't think I've been like, wow, I was surprised how good that show was.
What about, Beyond the Boundary or whatever? You know how I pretty much refuse outright to watch KyoAni stuff unless it's free. And so, I haven't watched the first episode of a KyoAni show in a long time.
Beyond the Boundary, I found the girl to be so, incompetent, and the guy to so be dime store Kian that
I see, okay. But... Okay, I guess I was thinking of Chunibyo, but you didn't do a right control of that.
I mean, I would have, I just didn't. That was just before we started, otherwise I would have done that. But that series was actually pretty fun. I actually have not watched the first episode in this season, but I will eventually do that. But that show was surprisingly fun.
But yeah, so the riot controls are really recent, and there are a lot fewer of them because, I mean, we watch a lot of first episodes. I watch a lot of stuff.
And there is one other reason I do them.
What? What's the other reason?
Because whenever I participate in Secret Santa, if the show stinks...
You don't have to do it because it's on the dropped list? Al, you are a genius. That's brilliant.
I'm always preparing for Secret... That's why my Secret Santa wasn't horrible this year.
Because you've been preparing for it. Excellent. The other things that we added last year was the case closed reviews, which sound like what they are. We noticed that people were kind of curious from our SWAT reviews, our first impression, to our last impressions for the shows that we watched all the way through and finished, did it live up to our expectations, or, how did it all turn out? And so we started doing reviews, again, very quick reviews. They're a little bit longer because, we're talking about like a whole season of a show, but not super long, final impressions. And we enjoyed doing those, but in a weird turn of events here with the fall season, we haven't done any because none of the shows we were watching they're all continuing. So we didn't end up having any to do, which was an odd thing. But we will be continuing them, when shows that we are watching start ending.
I mean, we'll
do a Precure one.
Yeah. If I was just, I mentioned that one. And then the other side of the coin is obviously the post-mortem. When we drop a show, we sometimes, explain why we had to drop a show.
And usually that has to do with our first impression. We liked it, we decided to continue it, but then somewhere down the line, we hit the eject button for one reason or another. And again, I think people were curious about, basically, it's like, oh, how wrong we were because we had to stop.
Because I feel like every once in a while, people have been like, why did you drop that show?
Well, let me tell you. And again, those are maybe a little bit longer than the SWAT reviews, but we've added a lot of the mini podcasts because they are honestly not very difficult for us to do, but also people seem to like them and enjoy them, and I appreciate that, you guys do, tune in for that stuff, so it's fun to do.
Oh.
We never did do a post-mortem. It's like, we should have done a post-mortem for Copelion, but, we never actually dropped it. We just pretended that we were gonna finish it. We were like, yeah!
We're so close to finishing it. Oh, don't we only have one episode left?
2. But, okay, after episode 11, again, another aside in this podcast, after episode 11, pretty much we all were like, do I even care at this point? Because you've literally killed a main interest. It was my main interest at that point in the show. And I mean, everybody else, liked this character. So it was like, and then we had that conversation where we're all like, so this is probably what happens in the next 2 episodes, as if that counts as finishing watching it. So we're like, no, this is what's gonna happen, and then this thing, oh yeah, and that's gonna happen, alright, and then it won't totally wrap up because the manga's still going, okay, yeah, you think that'll be it? Okay, cool. And then I feel like we pretended we watched episodes 12 and 13.
And then Aoi went, I'm such a knucklehead. Wah, 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 wah.
Could have predicted that as well. So I guess
and that last episode tried to pretend like Aoi has any powers or is useful. Bullshit, I say.
Everything is her fault. I hate her. So we should have done a post-mortem.
That would just, I think our post-mortem would just be us going back and forth about how Aoi is such a horrible character.
How she gets she just sucks. It's terrible. Brings ruin upon everyone.
Oh, and that the show has Copelion logic, but I feel like that is overshadowed by just the black hole.
I feel like I could accept certain things about, the internal logic of the show. And if, and of course, then also part of that would also be us complaining that Aoi should go away and Haruto should join the group and then, happily ever after. But this is not a post-mortem about Copelion, so we are going to move on now and stop ranting and raving about it.
And we have added one other thing, which is the crime scene investigations. They're not a lot of them.
That's true.
But I feel like, especially since we've had more ability to do stuff portably, we have been doing, and they were usually wrap-ups of cons we've been to, but now that we have a little more ability to do stuff at cons portably, I mean, New York Comic Con, we did a podcast after every night that we were at New York Comic Con. That was fun. Although I think you can tell how tired we are in all of those podcasts, but otherwise. And I'd like to do that for other cons that we attend, because once again, they're quick and they're a nice supplement to the podcast, and they kind of I feel like they're the gut reaction to the convention, whereas the blog post is kind of like when you sit back and take it all in.
And also, though, we put those on YouTube because they're not very edited, and a lot of times we don't have enough room to get, again, because our limit on Libsyn, we have to be careful that if we post too much on there, then we don't have enough room to post the Speakeasy, which usually, comes later in the month. So we always have to be careful. It's a balancing act. So Crime Scene Investigations for New York Comic Con were on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, we started doing something new, or rather, Al started doing something new last year.
I was like, oh, people like video podcasts. I might as well try my hands at it. So I've been doing a chapter day keeps the doctor away, where I attempt to do one chapter of manga a day. That is with the SWAT reviews and the holidays. I've kind of been doing like them in batches, but hopefully when things calm down a little bit more, I'll get back into my normal chapter a day flow. But I don't know. I'm basically giving it 365 of them, and then I'll determine how much I want to. If I want to change the frequency I do them, maybe I'll do them only on weekdays or something. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I don't know. It's just, once again, short little things. I don't edit that much because
video's way harder to edit too, because at least with voice you don't have to worry about like syncing up or
Yeah, and so like once again, if I was doing something more elaborate, I might prepare a script and all that. But yeah, I basically just like do it through once.
Well, it's like the SWAT reviews of manga, right?
Yeah.
Kind of. Except you're doing a lot of continuing series.
Yeah.
It's not just the first chapter. It's, the new chapter of One Piece, and then as, every week that they come out, things like that, right?
Yeah. But yeah, since it definitely was sparked by the idea also that there are all those Shonen Jump chapters day and date. There are now all those Kodansha mangas day and date. I figured there's enough like legal chapters day and date that I might as well start doing reviews of that. And I don't know, I got like 2 people who regularly follow it, and then like maybe stuff that's like One Piece, like the Jump stuff gets a lot of hits, and then pretty much everything else doesn't. In fact, I think like the more popular the title does, the more hits I will get. Like stuff like 87 Clockers, I think has like 7 views or something like that.
But you're doing them on YouTube. They're video casts, so it's a different thing, and it's a different audience. I think it's more of an experiment because we're not familiar with YouTube. Yeah. The best way to get your YouTube viewers or whatever. Although you did get that new fancy camera, and it's really great for D&D.
It is the best D&D tool that I ever bought for the blog.
It's like this widescreen. HD cam, so because we play our D&D sessions with some friends over Google Hangouts, so we're always using the webcam, and they're not that great, but now Al has this amazing camera that like has the span of the living room, so we're all actually on screen at the same time. It's gonna change the way we play D&D, Al.
I don't know, once again, they're not that hard to do, so I don't see any reason, even though and I've only been doing them for a short amount of time, so we'll see how that turns out.
But also, I think it's nice that you're doing something manga related, because we do a lot of anime stuff, and we're big manga fans. I think that's clear. But and then we lean towards the anime side, especially on the podcast. So it's nice that to do something solely manga focused, which is cool. I'd love to do SWAT reviews of manga, but I think we're a few years away from getting that much at the start of a series, getting simul-pubbed and things like that. But I, have hopes for the future of doing something like that.
And the problem is also that we get very few series chapter 1. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 Jump titles, but even most of the Jump titles that have been continuing, other than like cross-manage, have been here's popular series, chapter 34.
They didn't... Well, actually, not true, I think, because One Punch Man... World Trigger...
One Punch Man has still been going on for a while.
Oh, Oh, you're saying that we get the first chapter at the same time Japan gets the first. Oh, okay. I thought you meant, because like sometimes they put stuff in the Weekly Shonen Jump where it's the first chapter of it, but you're saying it's not the first chapter, but when it's the first
We got
chapter.
Cross-managed not that long after.
Okay.
And one or two series that they tried to start, like the one with the kid who basically the Prince and the Pauper one.
Barrage.
Yeah, Barrage.
Totally underappreciated.
Like one or two of those series, but most of the series we get that have been going on for a while. And all the Kodansha ones we haven't started.
Definitely.
So, like, it's not like, once again, one of the series I just recently reviewed, it's not like we got the first chapter of a certain scientific accelerator or something. And I feel like that would be the best thing to do a SWAT review about, because I feel like that's what it's going to be, totally fresh to everybody. We're all going to be basically on page 1. Maybe it'll come out a day or two after Japan, but pretty much anybody who listens to that podcast won't be like 30 books ahead and be like, oh yeah, you don't know that in book 25, what do you call it?
Such and such happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be everybody's pretty much first impression, but I feel like that is not something that is totally out of the question. I could see that happening in 2 or 3 years. Then what do you call it?
That's what I'm thinking, or like hoping. I don't know.
I can't say it'll be as frequently as we get anime, but I could see, 2-3 years down the line, definitely. Several series, and once again, Shonen Jump has tried to do it with Cross-Manage and Barrage and a few other chapters, so it's not out of the question for it to become more commonplace.
So look forward to SWAT manga reviews in the future, guys. As for the actual Speakeasy, I mean, it's really...
Wouldn't those be SMIT? Because it's seasonal watching anime task force.
Damn, it doesn't work. We need a new acronym, because we have some obsession with like staying completely in theme for the blog. We got the detective theme going on, and so I feel like we try to stay on target as far as like our naming conventions and stuff, because everyone super cares.
It is one of the many things about the blog and podcast that only you and I ever pay attention to.
But I've had people say that they like that it's all like, it has like a thematic thing going on. Anyway, whatever. We like it, so we have to come up with little cute names for everything that we do. Oh, but the Speakeasy itself is really the thing that we've been doing for, this is the starting the 5th year now. And I was trying to think about how it's changed, or...
Do you remember what we waited a whole year to do?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
We waited a whole year before we had our first guest.
Oh! We did?
Yeah. You wanted to...
Tell me what I thought, Al. Tell me.
Because I remember this was your thing.
I don't remember.
You wanted us to develop a voice, so we didn't have any guests on until we had done a year's worth of podcasts.
Wow, that was really intelligent of me. I was really having forethought at that point.
So yeah, we didn't have our first guest on until year 2.
Okay.
I just know it's something I very specifically, because 1 or 2 people had asked to be on, and you were like, no, we're not going to have any guests on until year 2. And that's when we had our first guest.
Yeah, we've had a bunch of different people over the years, although this past year we didn't do a lot of guests. I think that was just sort of time constraints, because I don't know if you've noticed this, but people are really hard to pin down when you need to do podcasts, and, we are... If we can say nothing else good about our podcasts, it's that we adhere to our schedule. We have released a Speakeasy podcast every month for 4 years. That's why last in December, that was episode 48, because we have released one every single month. And I feel proud that we've been very good about adhering to our schedule on the blog and podcast. And so when we need to adhere to that schedule, though, sometimes it creates problems with having guests, because, if they can't do it in a certain amount of time, we need to do a podcast, we have to edit it, we have to get it up. So also having a guest makes editing like super, super hard. It's really difficult. Yeah, I mean, Al does tons of guest spots.
I will say, just because I noticed it when I was on the Awesome Cast twice, to do the main game and then the DLC, I notice that both of us go through weird periods. Either one of us will be on a bunch of podcasts, and then we will go a long time without either of us or one of us being a guest on a podcast.
Al, you are on like 10 times as many podcasts as I am.
I'm just more frequently, but I will go through like, basically I'll be on like 3, and then nothing for a long time. Then like 3, and nothing. You'll be like on 2, then double the amount of time that I'm not on a podcast. I found that, like, even you tend to be, like, invited on, like, 3 podcasts and then nothing for a year.
Yeah, I wonder, feast or famine, I guess. I don't know why that is.
Like, I don't see any discernible reason for it, but yeah, I just noticed that it happens to both of us that we will guest on a bunch of podcasts in a very short period of time, and then nobody will want anything to do with us for a while.
That's because they heard too much of us. They're like, ugh, man, we need a break.
I'm still surprised we got as many people on and that took quite a bit of coordination for that Women in Anime Fandom podcast. That is still some kind of like magical, mystical.
It was, because that was like an international, like podcast. I don't even know how we did that, because I can barely get like someone from one of the Brits on. It's like so difficult now. I don't know why.
Does that also help that I work so early in the morning and have to go to bed so early? We record on the weekends. I mean, it just has lots of factors. You never know how it's going to end up, I guess. But at the actual Speakeasy, so the guest thing was interesting. Like, I don't even remember. Thank God you remembered that, Al. I didn't. I'm trying to think if anything about it has really changed. I guess we didn't always have interrogation room. We didn't always have food for thought. I feel like we kind of structured it a little bit more as time has gone on. But other than that, it's always been, we generally try to make it an editorial podcast. Every once in a while, we feel like we really want to talk about one show. But I still think that when we do, we talk about it a little more editorially than really review-y. Like, we've talked about Legends of the Galactic Heroes, and we've talked about Kakaishi in the past, but we don't really do reviews on the podcast, and we've tried to adhere to that, which sometimes is seriously difficult. Not because we want to do reviews on the podcast, but coming up with a topic every month is sometimes like a real task. I feel like every once in a while it's like, let's just talk about Gundam Unicorn.
Whatever, something.
Although that does remind me, we should probably do a case closed when Gundam Unicorn comes.
That's a great idea. We should do that. But yeah, I just don't think that... I hope that we've gotten better at talking about our ideas. I feel like I have not, now that I'm saying this, I don't know if I've learned anything. Honestly, I don't know if I've learned anything from the beginning, from starting this podcast till this moment.
I think that I have learned that people like to make fun of my pronunciation. Is there anything I would like to ask the audience? No, we'll get no answers, except for, like, joke answers. But we'll ask anyway, out of a belief in a higher truth. That maybe one day people will give us serious answers.
Wow, you are optimistic tonight.
My question would be, is there any new things or additional sections that people would like to see on the podcast? As with any Reverse Thieves / Speakeasy suggestion box things, I am never obligated to do any of them, as Kate has fervently in the past been like, this is a great idea I have no interest in ever doing. Rip, 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 rip. Garbage can.
Well, I think one of the things...
But I think we honestly look over all of them and consider them in earnest. And then sometimes we'll rip them up. That is just garbage.
Because I think one of the things a lot of podcasts do is like, what have you been watching? What have you been reading? Whatever, like a little section of that. But I feel like we usually cover that in ongoing investigations on the blog.
But I feel like, because I've listened to a lot more podcasts than you do.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, like Awesome Cast does that, and Chaos Theater. And gamers were never once a year now.
When they were more frequent.
But I feel like that's usually because they don't have a large... See, Any Gamers would be the weird exception because I feel like it's usually podcasts that don't have a blog component. And since they're not usually talking about what they're watching on some other format, that's the time that they...
Well, that's why I was saying that we sort of cover that elsewhere. And would it be that interesting because this podcast is only once a month, whereas like the ongoing investigations is like at least twice a month. So, like, I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
It's a section that I think comes up in a lot of other podcasts, but...
Yeah, no, true.
But you listen to a ton, Al. You probably, if you had ideas, Al would have told me. So...
I would have stolen them from better podcasts.
Yes!
And taken them and put them here.
Exactly. We're going to take a break, but first, food for thought, which will kind of kick off our question section, the second part of the podcast, is... Are there any topics that you'd like to do on the podcast, but you feel like you don't know enough about, or not qualified to talk about? So we're gonna take a musical break, and then we'll be back.
Alright, podcast, we're back. Sadly, you will never hear the stinger about Cat Guy.
Sorry, yeah, I should have been recording when we went on this, 5-minute rant about the new Kuroko's basketball opening. I guess I am a Kuroko's basketball fan. I guess that's what I can be known for at this point. Okay, so before the break, we mentioned our food for thought, which was, are there any topics that we'd like to do for the podcast, but haven't been able to because we feel like we don't know enough about it, or, whatever reason.
And I guess I'm going to go first because I always give you the question, then you answer it, and then refuse to let me tell you my answer. Once again, since we're talking about how the podcast works.
Yeah, so, okay, yeah, no, that's good. People want some background, behind the scenes interest. So, I like to be surprised on the podcast by Al's answers to questions that either, we're answering, about a show or about a series, within, or the interrogation room, or when people ask us questions. I like to be surprised and react in real time to whatever Al says. So I oftentimes won't let him tell me anything.
So, yeah, 9 times out of 10, I know what Kate's answer is going to be, unless for some reason she feels like, I'm not going to tell you till the podcast, which has happened once or twice. But 9 times out of 10, Kate has no idea what I'm going to say because she refuses to let me tell her what my answer is going to be.
You know what? It's kind of like how we watch anime, though. You know what I mean? Because, you don't care about spoilers,
yes.
But I feel like it's podcast spoilers. I don't want any, but you don't mind, and you feel like you can react just the same, no matter that you know my answer beforehand.
Every once in a while, I surprise you, me mentioning that, my favorite Gundam female
is Sayla?
I answered, and when I surprised you when I didn't say Sayla, I said Audrey.
Oh, okay. I feel like recently you surprised me with something else. I don't remember what it was. But anyway, alright, so surprise me now, Al. So what is your answer?
I've always been kind of interested in doujin culture, especially doujin RPGs, but once again, doujin culture is we're so removed from it. We really, once again, the old thing is, 9 times out of 10, the only thing we see here in America, other than people's random weird Twitter posts of, I went to Comic-Con and I got this 18 doujin, is porn. Because that's what most people bring over, that's what most people translate, because
obvious reasons. Don't need to be discussed.
But from what I understand, there's whole days where that is not the majority of that, even just in Comic-Con. And there are smaller doujin events, some of which are just here's nothing but Code Geass porn, or here's nothing but homosexual Code Geass porn. But there are some days and events that are, here's my homebrew RPG, or here's nothing but train guides. And I'd really like to, that is a topic that I'd really like to know more about or do something about, but
I think it's also one of those topics that I feel like you could know more about it if we spoke Japanese and, you know, could go on like 2chan or like just, it's something that's so Japanese and if you don't speak Japanese, it's a lot harder to have have your finger on the pulse of like that community and such.
And even I feel like certain people that we know who do, like Carl knows Japanese to, you know, a not native but fairly fluent level. Even he only kind of gets drips and drabs because he's not in Japan and he basically gets like twice filtered stuff even speaking Japanese.
Yeah, that's true. My answer is something that came up on the blog quite a while ago when we were writing a small article about mushishi, and I'd really love to do something about yokai. I love a lot of these stories that we've gotten about, like I said, mushishi or like Natsume, Yujinsho. Really love, they've got all these sort of Japanese myth and monsters, and not like super scary stuff. Like that's not what I like, but and then there's even, you know, smaller series like Kamichu and
I do feel like people have noticed that we do get about 1 to 2 yokai, at least heavily integrated series per season now.
And then, but so obviously we could do one about like that there's this yokai manga and anime, but really what I mean is like knowing something greater about the yokai and relating them to things, which is just like completely outside my realm of knowledge. I just read, you know, these manga and it also stirred up in me again because, you know, Mushishi is getting this second season and it has the anime special out, which I still haven't watched. But yeah, so something like that would be really cool. And of course, there are people who know a lot about it, but I just don't even feel like I know enough except to sit here and go, tell me more. Like, so even if we had like somebody on to talk about it. So that's kicking off our question section. So we have a bunch of questions. We're going to answer them. They're various different degrees of serious. Okay, so this one was from Twitter, and it was, are there any topics covered in the past which you wish you could redo or, you know, do again that we've done?
Since we went over 4 years worth of stuff, I think the number one thing that popped out at us, and actually was requested, I think, by Vinny before, from All Geek Considered, was that we should, he said one very specific one, but I think we're definitely going to go back and look at industry stuff again, and because all the industry podcasts definitely could, you know, basically state of the industry could use a update, because they're always changing. I mean, I don't think that either the anime or the manga market is anywhere where it was 3 years ago. Both of those industries have changed a lot. How they relate to the fans, how the fans relate to them, how they relate to Japan, how Japan relates to anybody.
And, I mean, during the period that from when we started the podcast till where we are now, just the whole simulcast boom has taken place in that time, and now the digital manga stuff has, you know, started to take place. So I think the one that you're mentioning that Vinny brought up was the Digital Revolution podcast that we did, and that was from 2011, and it's already like super different now. So yeah, it's always evolving, and it's changed so much as we've done this podcast that it's always relevant to start to talk about the industry again. And of course, over the last few years, you know, we've lost a few companies, things like that. So that, of course, changes the landscape a lot.
And I don't think any company does business the way that they did back in 2011. And if any company that tried to still do stuff like they did in 2011 or 2005 is not around anymore.
Right. Because they have to change. It's just different. Not only is the industry different, but the fans are different. The technology is different. It's always worth talking about. But speaking of that, well, yeah. So speaking of that, though, is this question about, you know, like, I think we kind of answered it, but like, how has the industry changed since we started doing the podcast? And then how has our relationship to the industry changed?
Well, Kate, I've always been a rebel outsider. Taking the anime law into my own hands. And they curse me. What do you call it? That Rebel Mendez.
Wow, this sounds so familiar.
I've only grown more infamous that, yeah. All right, real answer now, Kate.
Well, I do think, though, that this came up when we were reviewing the Crunchyroll manga app and, the end of the year, talking about sort of digital manga and such, but it's come up before, but, like, we've talked about how we rarely watch fan subs anymore. It's, and I think that's, like, one of the biggest changes for me since starting the blog or since starting the podcast is that that's just something that I so rarely have to go and do anymore, which is a big difference. Also, I feel like I don't think that I've gotten more cynical, because I don't know if anybody would ever describe me as a cynical person, but I do feel as though I've lost a little bit, and I think this is positive, that whatever the industry does is, like, the right decision. Like, I'm really over that. Because Aniplex, no! Just say no to Aniplex. But just sort of, like, not just deferring to whatever they do as, like, being the right answer, or being willing to just blindly follow their lead, because it's not always the right answer.
I do feel that, thinking about it, since we started talking about this even before the podcast, I do feel like there was this weird holy war back in the day. I'm building up to it. There was this weird holy war where on one side were the noble defenders of anime and the industry, who were like, what do you call it? Pirating is bad! Or at least, what do you call it? Or like, if you do, like, watch fan subs, you have to do it the right way. And like, we've got to help the industry, guys. And then there was the, basically,
damn the man.
Yeah, anarchy, no. The truest fandom is, what do you call it? Just love and, paying the filthy U.S. anime companies is the wrong. And what do you call it? I'm going to watch all my fan subs because that's the real way. And then, in a way, that argument, I mean, there's still people who exist on both sides. There's still people who like, I don't care what, I'm just going to watch my fan subs because that's the real way. And they're like, no, you must, buy anything that you watch. And
right. And there's still plenty of people who are like, you see it all the time, why are you using the English name for that? Or getting upset about the translated, like the way they spell a name or whatever, because in the fan scan, they didn't or whatever.
But I feel like a lot of people, I'd say a majority of people, move towards the middle when simulcasting happened, because there was this convenient way to watch things legitimately, but to really only pay for the stuff that you loved and do it in an extremely convenient way that was more convenient than fan subs. And then basically a lot of that hoorah on both sides kind of just died down, and we were kind of left with a semi-cynical middle. Where most people were like, yeah, you guys are all right, but I'm really going to criticize you all the time.
Well, I mean, it's not like I think they're wrong all the time. I certainly don't think that. But, it's one of those things where I know that they have reasons behind everything they do. I'm not an idiot. I mean, I work for a big company too. Like, I know that there are reasons behind it, but that doesn't mean, like, as a fan that I have to be like, well, I guess then I gotta. Like,
oh no, I just
I feel like I've lost some of that.
I still feel there's a range, but I feel like now it's a lot more moderates, and the range is in the moderate range. Whereas before it was a lot more polarized.
There was a lot more hardcore arguing about it too. You're right.
I remember like, it must have been like a few months ago. There was like some guy on like Seventh Style blog. I don't even remember the name of the blog. Who was like, anybody who has a Crunchyroll subscription is a sucker because they're paying for nothing. And what do you call it? The only true way to watch anime is fan subs.
Oh God!
And then everybody basically got really indignant about it because, it's Twitter and that's what people love to do. And like, that guy is such an idiot. Let's all gather together and, like, get this guy huge amounts of hits as we all tell him what a moron he is. And then pat ourselves on the back for a job well done, and then everybody forgot about it. And I'm probably the only person. Everybody who was really incensed in that argument probably has forgotten about that guy. And I just remembered it because I was like, this was very silly. I would like to mention that I've mentioned it again. I would also like to state that anything we have said about anime, just watch in 2 or 3 years, it will be the same about manga.
It's the truth. Actually, sorry, back to it, because that sort of, our answer to the question about any topics we redo sort of segued into that other question. But getting back to that, I think that we did a classic manga podcast, which people liked, and we could easily do another one just because, like, there's always tons of manga to talk about. You know, we don't talk about manga enough on the podcast, and there's always... Luckily, we've gotten, more classic stuff to talk about, so... And there's always, like, tons of classic manga that we'll never get that we can mention, like we did on that podcast. Like, oh, our wish list of stuff that we'll never read. Thanks!
Because no one in their right mind is ever going to license Hajime no Ippo. No. Well, yeah, Hajime no Ippo, but I was thinking of...
Ashita no Joe.
Either of them are very good and never going to be licensed.
Yeah. So, I think the Classic Manga Podcast, and, our first podcast that we ever did was about strong women in anime, and I think that that's a topic that is easily revisited, because I think it's something always to talk about, and it's such a hot topic right now, but I feel like when we did it at the time, it wasn't kind of the hot button issue that it is now.
Once again, all I could think is you could just do a whole episode on Kill la Kill and the fandom's, like, varied reaction and, like, just how they relate to Kill la Kill's feminism and how it has morphed over, like, by the time the show has ended. I think that the general fandom of that show will probably have flipped on their opinion of the gender roles in that series like 3 times.
It's a complicated one. That at an accelerated rate has happened with people becoming cynical or critical of shows that people really like, but it's like happening at a faster pace now. It's like I said, it's accelerated, because it used to take, like, after the season was over, or like the next year, everyone's like, oh, you were so into that show, but it wasn't really that great. But now that Kill la Kill's about halfway over, I'm just starting to see people who like the show now questioning its motives and where it's going. It's just very interesting to see that people are already, like, ready to write it off. So, considering the fervor in which it appeared before us, it's very interesting.
But, that's a... Pirates one.
But I'm just saying, I feel like it's happening faster. Like, it's not like this didn't always happen. It always happens. But seems to be happening faster and faster.
I just wanted to make a dig at damn potato space pirates.
No one cares anymore. And I think there's, like, a movie of that coming out. And I'm like, who cares? No one.
But that does... If this is cutting off another question at the past... I will mention what we were talking about before, which when I was preparing for this podcast. Talking about fandom getting more cynical. Man, I remember that when people used to believe in shows, man, because...
That's what I'm saying. Like, they're already, like, they haven't even, like... They can't even believe in it long enough, even though they love it. They, like, it's like they love it, but they're still questioning it. I don't know.
I'm like, man, you guys must be really bad in relationships. Like, I think they're cheating on me. You've been dating for like a week. No, I'm pretty sure they're cheating on me.
Terrible. But go on.
They know it in their heart. Anyhow, but I was like, I just remember that I feel like people really we're like, man, Penguin Drum has no idea what it's doing, and it's... it's not like all arguments against Penguin Drum are wrong, but all the arguments that were talking about how the show had no plan, you can't create the complex craziness
that intertwines in that show without having a plan, all right? You have to know where it's going.
And I feel like it's just funny because for Secret Santa, no, I'm not for Secret Santa. Old Geeks Considered recently just did a podcast about Utena, which I feel like since it came back in the classic day of, what do you call it, emerging anime American fandom, when it was kind of in its adolescence, not the young adulthood of its 2000s, I feel like everyone was like, Utena, brilliant, how it built up. And then Old Geeks Considered, only watching it this year, was like, man, that show retconned everything, every, like, arc. And, like, it totally made everything up as it went along.
No, it didn't! That's the same thing people said about Penguin Drum. Do you not understand that, like, you can't have things connect to the end if you were making it up as you went along? Like, it all connects. It all filters back. Like, it's insane, but it's thought through. Like, no. We're not having we can't, like, talk about this too much, because we're just gonna have, like, another hour and a half podcast. Go listen to our Utena Penguin Drum podcast. That one is still relevant.
And we call it, Vinny's just like, mail him an hour-long MP3 about me just going through that podcast, complaining. But
you did that?
No, I didn't. He's just lucky. But I was tempted.
Okay.
Or I was tempted to make you listen to that podcast and do the response with me.
But anyway, go on. So how does this relate to...
But yeah, I do just feel like fandom, one of the major ways I feel fandom has changed since we've started vlogging in general, is that, and since we've been doing the podcast, is that we have officially, finally, I think, become fully Japanese fans. In the sense that, what do you call it? Nothing is sacred anymore. It's what is in front of us. That is what we care about and what is popular.
What have you done for me lately?
And that's like one or two classic series that, what do you call it? Well, you know, for American fandom, Cowboy Bebop and Dragon Ball will be forever evergreen and forever in our hearts, filled with love. And everything else is basically like, I love this series. 2 seasons later, what series?
Well, I also just wonder if, like, even myself, I mean, I forget stuff. I have to keep a list of everything from the year just to, like, sometime to remember. But also, kind of going back to being a little cynical with this show, I feel as though I used to be a lot more willing to go along for the ride. Like, okay, let's see. I mean, apparently I'm still much more readily doing that than some people, which we'll get into another question here in a minute. But it feels like sometimes people aren't willing to go along for the ride anymore. That's kind of what the Kill la Kill thing has reminded me of. Like, you guys have been loving it, you're in it to win it, but no, you can't have any, like, faith or... You know, you can't believe in it. You have to, like, tear it apart right this minute for, like, it gets into your heart or something. I don't know. But I feel like even myself sometimes I'm not willing. Like, you know, we watch a lot of first episodes and it's like, well, hit it or quit it. Like, it's out of here. Like, but speaking of that, so... On a recent episode, what was it, Al? On an Anime 82 episode, whatever.
Yeah, it was on Anime World Order, but they were answering questions from the podcast Anime 82.
So they asked us a couple of questions. We're not answering all the questions because some of those questions were bullshit and there was no reason to answer them. But the one question we will answer is, how do you watch so much anime? And apparently this was said in, like, I don't understand how you can watch so much anime because there isn't enough good anime. Like, because, like, if you've listened to our SWAT reviews, you probably have a sense of how many shows we're watching every season. But, like, I don't know, we watch, let's say, between 5 and 10 currently running anime every season as they air.
I would also like to state, before we get into this question...
God. Oh, no.
That, what do you call it? I find it a little bit insulting that the question was only asked of you, as if either A, Al has no life, and thereby all the free time in the world to watch garbage, Or B, Al has so little taste. Nobody God, he can eat at the trough of garbage.
Just stop. I don't know. I guess that's
It was only asked of you, Kate.
Well, we're both gonna answer it, so, like, too bad. Gerald can clarify later.
Joe can go fuck himself. Especially since I was the only one who got 2 questions, and both of them were insulting.
I see. Okay.
Well, I got one question that was insulting, and then one question was to you was insulting back to me.
Are we gonna answer this question?
Fine, go.
Okay, so, as I said, so you have a sense of how many shows we watch every season, but, like, apparently, to some people, that seems like a lot. Like Gerald and Daryl seem to think that was a lot. Whereas some people would think that that is not a lot. And because, I mean, we watch it as a group. We watch with another friend of ours. So I think that's one of the things that, like, keeps us on track. We have a schedule. We have a certain day that we watch stuff on, and then if we need to catch up, you know, we squeeze them in here and there. So we have a schedule for watching them, which I think helps in seeing all the shows. But I think watching with other people, you know, makes it also easier to watch a lot of shows. But, like, we watch so much other stuff. I don't know how anybody, like, couldn't watch as many as we do, because we watch all this anime, but we also watch live action shows and live action movies. And we play D&D, and we all play video games, so it's like, I don't know what anybody thinks we do, but we pretty much go to work and then consume media. That's, like, it. So, like, watching 5 to 10 anime a season, not that bad.
You know what the common... Because they mentioned... Because I listened to the Anime World Order podcast. They mentioned that, like... See, their excuse kind of was, see, Kate, we live in New York.
I'm waiting for the excuse.
See, we have a commute. We have to, like, ride the subway for an hour to get to work back and forth. So this is when we can play video games.
That is true. I mean, I do play video games on the train.
And thereby, that's all our video game time. And thereby, we cut out one of the fundamental...
I wish that was all my video game time, because Animal Crossing has taken over my life. I wish I could just play it for an hour each way on the train.
No, Kate, you only played on the train, and that's why you have so much free time.
I mean, granted, I don't understand people who complain about a commute in New York City, because I get some of the best stuff done.
See, they're complaining that poor children like them don't have a commute.
I'm just saying, I'm agreeing with them that, like, I'm saying people in New York who complain about their commute, like... My commute is an hour each way, and I don't mind one bit, because I get all the best reading, video gaming, or, like, if I'm writing, whatever it is, like, I get all kinds of stuff done on the train. Doesn't bother me at all. So yeah, we watch all our anime on Sunday. That's pretty much it. Like, truth be told. All those shows, Sunday is anime day. That's pretty much when they're watched. That's it. So, I don't know, man, you all need to be more efficient with your lives, because I could watch more. Well, no, I probably couldn't. Oh my god, we're so behind right now, because vacations and holidays and everything, like, we're all a little bit behind. But we'll catch up, and then it'll all be fine. And then we'll have a new season of anime to watch, and it starts all over again. I do have to say right now, though, it is really hard, because there's been so many good shows. Booyah, Gerald. Totally so many good shows worth watching, that we haven't been able to finish up some of the older shows that we were watching, which we were watching in between, because it was like, well, you know, we just have a few shows this season. It's been a long time since we had a season where we're like, man, we're only going to watch, like, 3 shows.
You know what it is? But Kate, obviously...
Anime's still good, y'all.
No, Kate, but you obviously didn't schedule yourself correctly, because you didn't watch any Watamode.
No, I scheduled myself very rapidly.
I see. How could you have missed the greatest show of last season? Last year, last decade.
Wow. That is really a bold statement.
I made it easily, Kate, because it was the truth that the internet told me.
I thought Kill la Kill was the savior of anime.
No.
Oh, all right.
It was the false prophet. It's like the man who would be king. Kill la Kill was, what do you call it? Seen as a friend, it was seen as gods with its friends, but then it had sex with one of the native girls.
Okay, whoa. Let's just stop now. Gerald was actually asking this question because he doesn't think there's enough good anime to watch. I say you should stop. I don't know. Stop being so like you. It's like there's lots of great anime to watch. Come on, like.
But Kate, the only reason that you like all those shows is because, you know, you obviously like Kuroko's Basketball. It's the only thing there to watch is boys kissing, because that's obviously all that goes on there.
I can tell you that I've watched very closely, and there's been no boys kissing in Kuroko's Basketball. I would have noticed.
Kate would have remembered.
I definitely would have remembered that.
It would have gone in my dream journal.
Stop that. Do not make me out. See, this is also the danger of, like, of you saying stuff about me and then people taking it as being truth. But,
Kate, note to self, I dream journal.
Oh, man, the internet already thinks I'm a secret Fujoshi. This is not helping.
Look, internet, note that Kate is much more invested in the hat pairings in Kuroko's Basketball.
I am. I actually am. No, well, a little bit. I'm not going to totally lie. That would be wrong. But, like, if you like sports anime, right now I think is a pretty good time to be watching sports stuff, so why aren't you watching that? Or, Space Brothers. If you're not watching Space Brothers, I don't know what your problem is, man. Like, that show...
You obviously don't like space.
That show is
fun.
moving. It just had this, you know, we finally got some resolution to all this training, and like, oh man, the last episode, I was like tearing up in joy. And the next episode's gonna be the same way, man, I know it! It's like sad bros, like, but it was like really, but now it's like joyous bros.
Unless something bad happens in the next episode.
No, nothing bad's gonna happen. But, you know, I don't know, like, I think that's like such an amazing show, totally worth watching. I think there's always good stuff. Always. There's never been a season where I didn't have, like, more than 2 shows to watch. I don't think it's that hard. But, you know, I think if the podcast has shown anything about us, that we have pretty eclectic tastes. We like every genre, except, I guess, like, incest.
That is not a genre.
I think Japan would disagree with you.
Look, Kate, I'm going to pretend that it's not a genre until I see it as a section of Barnes & Noble, and then in which case I go home and cry.
But, you know, like, I feel like we like a little bit of everything, so I don't know what else to say. I like anime.
That's what we've been doing wrong with the podcast all the time.
If only we hated anime, we'd be popular. But speaking of, we had a question that was like, how have we changed over 5 years on podcasts? I don't know. I mean, it sounds so terrible. It almost sounds terrible to say I haven't changed in 5 years. Like, well, we did mention sort of I mentioned, you know, how I felt about the industry has changed a little bit.
I will say, since we've started the blog, definitely, I've never actively participated in any fandom that I have been a part of. I was in sci-fi fandom for the longest time. I was in tabletop RPG fandom for the longest time. I've been in fantasy fandom for a long time. But I have never been, like, on forums. I mean, I've gone to conventions in the past, but I never interacted with people there. I went to panels. I would browse the dealer's room. I'd maybe look on forums, but I was never someone to write blog posts, trade emails, go on forums and talk and stuff like that. Go to fan clubs. I just would consume my media and kind of peek in on what the fandom was. Well, once again, as I've had discussions to you about what literary and TV sci-fi fandom is like, and basically why I've stayed out of those things, But if you notice, in no time do I mention how I was a part of those things. It was like, I was a fan and I saw that fandom, but never the two did mix. And I feel like this is the first time I've actively participated with other members of a fandom and kind of traded information and actively sought out people. And like, once again, we've had Pats over for conventions and we had Caleb over for conventions.
Well, both of those people are like good friends now. It's not like, you know, they're not like internet friends or anything like that.
And I've met people at cons and had dinner with them, and that's something I would have never done in the past. So if nothing else, the blog has done that much.
Yeah, I don't know. I always consider myself pretty friendly, but I think that the podcast and the blog have definitely expanded my social circle a little bit. The same as you, Al. I like talk to a lot more people. Conventions are these places where I meet up with people that I only see at conventions, and that's a really great experience. And usually meet new people every year, and like, same thing with Twitter has really expanded sort of that relationship with having friends all over the country and all over the world, which is really cool. I think that's, one of the great things about doing what we're doing. I mean, even if we didn't do this, we'd hopefully be on Twitter and having great conversations.
I was going to make an apology.
Who?
To the internet in general.
Oh, they love that. Go ahead.
I was like, I do notice that a lot of times at cons, people will be like, oh, I love the blog and I love the podcast. And I will basically like shake somebody's hand and run off, but I'm usually doing stuff. So I do feel a little bad that I do run into people and I don't have like long conversations with them. I always feel a little bad.
You meet lots of people who say that?
I think like at least once a year we run into somebody who knows at least one of us through the blog or the podcast and says hello, and then we usually have to run off to like cover some panel or do some event. And
I will, I think I mentioned, it was this past Otakon, and I think I mentioned it on the Otakon podcast. It was the first time somebody recognized me from my voice. I think that was at that convention where somebody was like, hey! Because I was like standing in line and talking to somebody else, and then they hey, did you...
People recognize me a little bit more because I have such a weird cadence to my voice. And most people can't place my accent.
Well, people recognized mine too, Al.
I'm just saying that you have a bit more of a Midwestern cadence to your voice growing up where you did, and thereby... And to be honest, you have a much more pleasant lilt to your voice.
That's right.
Whereas, what do you call it? The only real benefit to my annoying cadence to my voice that is distinctive.
But yeah, so I guess in that way, I mean, I don't think it's changed. Like I said, at least for me, like I feel like I've always been a pretty friendly person. So I don't feel like I've become more friendly, but I know more people for sure.
Although, Kate, now that I think about it, you should be distinct for nothing else. You don't have generic girl podcaster voice.
That's why I got recognized, Al, obviously. I feel like... I know Al's going to laugh if I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I feel like that I have let go of some of the control of the blog and the podcast than I did from when I was at the beginning of it. I mean, the podcast maybe less so because we didn't start it, but like the blog, I felt like I was like a complete control freak. I felt like I was, and it was crazy, and it was just not the way to do it. And I think that's changed a lot over the course of the years, and it's like much less strict and stringent, and I think that that's a good thing, and I think it's made the blog and the podcast better. And Al's probably like, oh my god, she's still such a fucking control freak, but I don't care. I am like less than I was, I swear to god. That doesn't mean I'm not organized, however. I'm extremely organized, and that's not the same thing.
I think we have a bit more rhythm to the podcast. I don't think that's necessarily obvious to people because, I mean, once again, there's a little bit of editing and a little bit of... But I feel like we can usually just hash things out a little more over email, and then by the time we sit down, it's just kind of tightening things up, and then we go in. Because I do remember just recently I I do remember just recently on Twitter, somebody complaining that, man, because there was some
huge explosion about, there's like this huge blowback about to podcasters sucking for some reason.
I remember why, but it's not worth going into. But once again, it brought out the natural self-loathing of anime fans. And so, like, since there's one bad apple of podcasters, all anime podcasting is horrible, and we're all just incestuous people who don't know what we're doing. Boo-hoos, boo-hoos. And part of that, what do you call it, pity fest, was somebody complaining that, like, most anime podcasts just don't have any structure. They're like, let's just wing it. And I mean, I don't think we've ever just winged it. I'm always like, when I do like a guest post and people are like, oh no, maybe we'll do this.
Yeah, I think also if we've had a guest and then they've gotten our outline, they're like, well, this is probably like, there's a structure they can tell you.
And so
it's been sent to them.
But I feel like we've kind of, I mean, we've always had a structure, but I feel like we're a little tighter about it. Without kind of losing the flow that we usually have, which I think is a nice growth, but not necessarily stagnation.
It's just one of those things where it'll never be this, but, you know, like, the idea of the podcast really came out, besides from Sean, you know, really fostering us to do that. It really came because, you know, me and Al are good friends, so we talk all the time, and this is like, oh, okay, this is just like a conversation that we would have. But, you know, you can never I mean, some people can really capture that, kind of the spark or that moment, but, you know, I don't think we'll ever get to that point where it's really exactly like how our conversations flow in real life, because we're aware of, you know, other people having to listen to us. We're aware of trying to be cohesive and following some sort of structure for it, whereas, you know, your conversations with your friends are really freeform and go off on tangents such. So we know that that's not really the way to go, but at the same time, you know, I hope that people find humor in the podcast, but, like, when we're just all shooting the shit, it's just so funny and it gets so crazy that, like, it's something that I feel like we can't really replicate it on the podcast. Totally.
Kate, you don't want people to hear like a 20-minute pedantic lecture I go on about how it rips in the coalition states? What do you call it? The evil family keeps everybody illiterate and has all the mechas be piloted by iconography as opposed to text.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's what I think most people... That's what you're missing. That's what you're missing, people.
Is me going, Al, we don't know what you're talking about. Like, stop doing that. Like, explain. No, that's not how all of the conversations go. As we mentioned when we came back from break, that we had this really weird, hilarious conversation about the opening to Kuroko's basketball. Can't be replicated. But you know, just it's so natural, but it's so not natural to be. At least it's not for me to have my voice recorded. I mean, this is a pretty big step for me, because I will not do video podcasts or video casts, because that makes me so self-conscious. Like, I can't do that at all, and so I feel like podcasting is the most that I could possibly do, because I can't, and I also like can't act or anything like that. So I can't do that stuff.
Random tangent, partially related. Did you see that article I shared about how's the best way to do public speaking?
Yes, because that works for me.
I just thought, for everyone who did not read that article, apparently you should get super psyched and hyped up. You shouldn't try to get relaxed. That'll only tends to bring on your stage fright. If you're totally pumped and excited and like wired, that is the best way to do public speaking.
So you should drink like 4 cans of Red Bull before you do any public speaking. No, yeah, I felt like that's what I do at conventions, because getting up on stage and doing a panel is really terrifying. I mean, I understand if people don't want to do it, or they get stage fright, or, you know, they mess up while they're on stage, because it's like a lot of pressure, I think. But I like get all jittery, and then I have to just go with it. Otherwise, I'd freak out, because it does freak me out. But I do it anyway. I mean, I think that's also one of the things about something like that, is that I'm not saying you should always do things that make you uncomfortable, but it's not always such a bad thing to do things that you're afraid of. I'm still afraid of it. I still do it, though. I think I'm less afraid of it, but, like, I don't think necessarily always not doing something because you're afraid of it is the best decision, so.
Random question. Do you think that panels have helped you do the podcast more, or do you think that podcasting has helped you do panels more?
Huh.
That question was from Alan Mendez of Brooklyn, New York.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure which way it goes, because we had been doing panels before we did the podcast. So maybe, one led into the other a little bit and made me more comfortable with it. I'm not sure. I really enjoy doing panels. It makes me, happy. It makes me excited. Somehow I feel like the flow of that is so much better. I always think that, as I told you guys earlier, I never listen to the podcast because it really freaks me out. And I don't know, it's like I judge myself too much or something. And the internet's totally willing to do that plenty, so I don't need to do it anymore. Somehow, maybe it's just because the panels, we practice it so much that it's got a natural, it's almost like instinctual. What about you?
I was about to say, so your clicks per minute during during a panel are amazing. A little like StarCraft, how it's like instinctual.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Exactly that.
Sweet a miss. All right. I was going to say, I feel like doing the panels really helped a lot with then doing the podcast, because I feel like that was like, hey, we can speak in public and people won't basically run outside and does anybody have rotten fruit? I really need where's that guy who always sells rotten fruit that they throw at the bad performers? But,
well, the thing for me, just as I said though, if it was a performance, I cannot do that. But because we're just up on stage talking, it's not like nonfiction talking, but it's just like lecturing, I guess you could say. It's not like acting. Then I can do that. I'm still scared, but I can do that.
So you would never be able to live broadcast a D&D session.
Absolutely not. That would make me so uncomfortable that I would just not talk. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be able to. I barely roleplay as it is. Let alone, if it were to be recorded. That would make me so uncomfortable. I can only play that because I'm with, my friends, my close friends. I don't think I could do that with, strangers. It would make me, it still makes me uncomfortable. Talking about it right now makes me uncomfortable. Okay, so final easy question. It's a easy pitch here. Last question, too, is what cons are we attending for 2014?
Oh, I love that.
Wow. If only we got paid to go to conventions.
I think that we're both going to try to go to Anime Next. I'm 95% in. Kate is going to try to get in at least Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to take the Friday off, but I am going to try to get out there. I haven't been for a few years, which I miss. I do know, though, that it's, super crowded now, which makes me a little worried. But they are having Rookies as Punked, is their musical guest, so.
And I didn't realize how much press badge could get me into stuff if I just, but I did learn that last year, so. But, I don't know, Anime Next is always fun. I'm definitely going to try to see all 3 days. Then after that, of course,
we have a new convention this year. I don't know how it's going to tie into the blog and stuff.
I thought we would at least do a little, maybe, podcast about it.
Yeah, I just didn't know if maybe we'll record up there or not. And no,
I'd
it's
like
not.
to.
Yeah, and no, it's not Anime Boston. We are going to PAX East for the first time, and a few other people roped us into it.
And I figured, what the heck? I mean, I've never heard anybody speak ill of that con. Anybody I know has had a great time. A bunch of people we know are already going. We're basically like, come on, man, we need more people.
And I feel like both of us have been gaming a lot more in the past year. Not that we weren't gaming before that, but with the 3DS, man, it's just life-changing. So, yeah, so we're heading to PAX East all 3 days, and that's a completely new thing for us. So, yeah, I don't know how it's going to fit into the blog. Obviously, it's not anime, it's not manga, and you know, it's not even, like, New York Comic Con, which is at least, like, comics and anime and other things, so we'll see, but I'm sure we will not, like, let the opportunity pass us by to talk about it on the podcast.
Then the standard 2 staples at, later on in the year, we're obviously going to Otakon.
They haven't announced anything, doesn't matter, it's Otakon, it'll be great, we'll love it, as always.
Have a great time. Won't have the, the big anniversary lineup, but I'm sure they'll have some, great guests, and if nothing else, it is Meet Up with Old Friends Con.
Definitely.
And then, since it's right in our backyard, and it is always super fun, we are going to New York Comic Con.
Yeah, I was kind of talking a little bit earlier in the on Twitter about, I'm a little worried about tickets this year for Comic Con. They haven't opened up yet, but tickets for everything has just been getting crazier and crazier for these big cons. So I'm wondering how that's all going to go, but hopefully we will be there all 4 days as usual. And I love Comic-Con, so I'm really looking forward to it. We got one new one on deck this year, so I'm nervous but excited about this PAX East experience.
I feel like the worst, unless utter tragedy happens, worst comes to worst, you have a bad experience at a con, you go, never going back to that con.
You always get a story out of it, but PAX East is also the first time where I've left the planning a little bit up to other people. I plan Otakon, and so, like, I'm used to that role, but I was like, you know what? You all have been before. You figure, you do it. See? You see how I'm letting control? You see that? I'm letting go. Let it go.
And if nothing else, Kate, you know what the most important part is? Eating at all new places.
I was gonna say street passes. That's why I'm going to PAX East. For all the DS-ness.
I thought we were going for new food, Kate.
Oh, fine.
New places to eat burgers.
Yes. All right. I guess we can do that too.
I mean, isn't that also half the reason to go to DC when Otakon moves? All new burger places.
Oh yeah, I've already looked up like new food places for Otakon, which isn't even moving until like 2016 or whatever it is. But I don't have a control problem. All right, so that's it for our little retrospective anniversary show, whatever you want to call it. Hopefully we make it through a whole another year and we can say we've been podcasting for 5 whole years at the end of 2014. But if you have not had enough of us, we of course have the SWAT reviews for the season. We pretty much watched nearly everything that's coming out, because it all came out in like the same week, which was really rough.
Yeah, I'll look forward to, like, I only have to edit 1 podcast before bed. How delightful! I also, as I mentioned, if you go to our YouTube channel, there's a link on the blog, or just look for the reverse themes on YouTube. I do a chapter a day, keeps the doctor away, where I talk about a bunch of series. And, I just shoot the breeze about the chapter, what I thought of it. And, what do you call it? Of course, there will always be a Hayate. That is all that I can guarantee you.
And finally, just from last year, everybody does their sort of like best of the year. Well, of course we did too. We have, Hisui Narutakiverse 2013 post, where we talk about our picks for Best Anime of the Year, Best Man and Woman of the Year, Hottest Man and Woman of the Year, and all kinds of other good stuff. It is only positive. Kept it all positive because, too much negativity in the fandom. So
here's what, if you were like, man, but I want to know what the worst of 2013 was, just go anywhere else on the internet.
Yeah, they'll tell you.
Throw a stone, it will, hit the worst of 2013 list. It's not that hard.
Okay, right. So that's it for another month of the Speakeasy podcast. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.